I work in the world as an outdoor educator and a wilderness guide. I run an organization called Back to Earth with my best friend from Berkeley High, and we take young people on transformative journeys into some of the most beautiful and most remote parts of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Often on our first night around the fire, I'll ask a couple of core questions. Who are you? And what are you here for? So much why we do the wilderness work is that when we go out into the unfamiliar terrain, these questions have somewhere new to land. That on the one hand, the wilderness is mysterious and devoid of those familiar comforts of home, and at the same time offers us this remarkable feeling of safety and of belonging. But it's just our first night, and we haven't really gotten that far. And so these questions, we're hearing them for the first time. And in my years of doing this work, I have tracked the responses and the patterns, and that forms the basis of what I want to talk to you about today. So on the one hand, some kids show up, and they have a hard time articulating even a basic answer to this question. I mean, we're talking about bright and capable teenagers, and sometimes these questions, who are you? What are you here for? It strikes them as really challenging to answer. It's like they haven't thought much about it. And the question itself seems strange, like, well, it's so obvious, though of course it is anything but obvious. And then on the other hand, I meet lots of young people who have anxiety and worry about not having a really clear answer to this question. Like at 16 or 17, they should by now know what they're about, have a plan, be executing the plan, have it all locked down and all figured out. So I just spent an hour on the phone last week with one of my guys. He is a freshman in college. He's a really great athlete. He's incredibly social. He does really well in school, and yet here he is a month into his freshman year, and he is feeling really troubled by what he's experiencing as a lack of clarity about his purpose for his life. And he went out with us in the backcountry, and he came back feeling like he knew, and then he got back into his life, and it started to fade. And I want to say I really admire him for being so young and caring so much and engaging with this question of his purpose. But I want him to be able to enjoy that process rather than feel burdened by it. So broadly, that's what I'm diagnosing, you could say, or tracking in the culture at large. On the one hand, young people who are just sort of drifting through from one thing to the next, and then on the other hand, young people who are feeling a lot of anxiety about their choices and worries that, they got to do the thing that's going to lead to the thing that's going to lead to the next thing so that it all works out perfectly, etc. So then what are we to do with this? We live in a culture that believes that a certain kind of achievement is what's going to offer us safety. And we can look back a generation or two and see even more rigid models of what achievement and success look like. And then we look at the vastness of our choices, and we can imagine that we've gotten really far from this achievement-based model of success leading to safety. But we haven't. Most of us remain deeply tethered to it, and our parents especially, bless their hearts, they want so badly for us to achieve because they want to know that we're going to be safe and be able to take care of ourselves in the world. And so it starts younger and younger. I don't know if any of you have had that experience, but if you're a competitive athlete or if you're applying to high school, the pressure grows. I certainly remember it myself when I was your age, this feeling like you have to make really good choices right now or it's going to all blow up. And there's so much riding on any given choice and what you're going to do from one day to the next. And I really want to honor and celebrate that feeling that, yeah, it matters. It really does. But here's the rub. We want to split this feeling that it matters, that our choices matter, that our sense of purpose matters, from being really anxious and worried that somehow we're going to mess up or do it wrong, and in the process make ourselves really unhappy. What I suggest is first to stop splitting everything up into things that matter and the things that don't. As in, well, this thing that I do that other people see or recognize, that matters. But this thing that I do in private when no one is watching, that doesn't. Or this thing that I do that might hurt or help other people, well, that matters. But over here, these things that I do that might hurt or help me, those don't. Or the things that certain people notice or validate, our parents, our coaches, an admissions officer, those matter. But the things that other people might notice or feel touched by, a stranger, our peers, a younger sibling, those don't matter so much. So that's the first piece. It all matters. So now the question is, how does it matter? We all know that every word that we speak sends a sound wave out into the world, out into this room, the sound wave that is reaching you right now. And if you can't hear me on the other side of the room, you might conclude that that sound wave has vanished, no longer exists. But it's not true. The sound wave, just because it has dipped below our perceptive radar, we can't hear anymore, it's still bouncing around somewhere, and then it's meeting up with some other sound wave, and they're bouncing around together, and they're going somewhere else that we don't know anything about. And now imagine that the entire world, this whole dynamic, vibrating universe that we are living in, is comprised of the waves and particles and ripples that are being sent out by all of the people, all of us in this room, and all of the people all around us all of the time. And not just the people, but we are a very powerful species, and our words and our actions send a very powerful rippling effect out into the cosmic web that binds us all together. So this is how we start to develop a new kind of answer to the question, who are you? What are you doing here? We get to become really interested and curious about the kinds of ripples that we put out and want to put out into the world. That's ultimately what we get to know about ourselves. What kind of ripples do I like to make? We get to become incredible observers of ourselves. So when I help my mother do the dishes, what kind of ripple does that send? How does that feel to me or to her or to our entire household? Do I like that? Do I like how that feels to me? Does that feel like the me that I want to become? Or what about when we say something kind of cutting or mean or sarcastic? Well, how does that feel? Or when we tell a little white lie that probably nobody's ever going to find out about, and really it wouldn't even matter if they did, how does that feel? Or if we just say, I'm bored, how does that feel? And I want to be really clear. This is not a question of morality, of doing the right thing even though you want to do something else. This is about learning to listen to the deepest part of ourselves, the part that actually really wants it to be good for us and for all the other people around us and for the plants and the animals too. So that's my invitation to you today. Try it. Pay attention to your ripples. Let's not pretend that some matter and others don't. They all matter. So make good ones. Find out what that brings to your life. Find out how it feels to be you doing that. Get curious. Who are you? What are you doing here? Thank you.